The first thing the woman did after being reborn was to change the internal structure of the mechanical lock. Whoever could unlock this lock would become her husband. In her previous life, to marry the crown prince, she told him the way to unlock the mechanical lock in advance, and finally became the crown princess as she wished. But as soon as the crown prince ascended the throne, he turned his back on her and ordered the execution of her entire family. Reborn with hatred, the woman returned to the day of her husband's selection, determined to make the crown prince pay the price. She went to the emperor and reaffirmed the rule for choosing a husband. Whoever unlocks the mechanical lock, she will marry. Unexpectedly, the crown prince was also reborn. He first brought his true love back from the brothel, and publicly asked to marry her as the crown princess. He even went further and proposed to take the woman as a concubine at the same time, only because the mechanism technique of the woman's family was unparalleled in the world, and the crown prince still wanted to use her family's power to help himself achieve his goals. The woman naturally refused to repeat the mistakes of her previous life. She immediately reminded the crown prince that only by unlocking the mechanical lock could he marry her. However, the crown prince was full of confidence. He picked up the mechanical lock and tried to unlock it with the method from his previous life, but found that the old method no longer worked. He threw the lock away in anger, accusing the woman of deliberately making things complicated. Then he continued to beg the emperor, even volunteering to put down the rebellion in the northwest. He thought that in his previous life, he had won the title of savior of the world with this military merit, but he forgot that his remarkable achievements in the previous life were inseparable from the support of the woman's family. In this life, without such support, the crown prince was destined to achieve nothing, but he still left arrogantly with his true love. The woman did not leave. She was waiting for the eighth prince. Soon, the eighth prince, who was late, appeared drunk. Looking at him, the woman remembered that before her death in her previous life, the eighth prince had stood in front of her to protect her. Only then did she realize that the eighth prince had always liked her. She resolutely asked the emperor to let the eighth prince try to unlock the lock. Surprisingly, even though the eighth prince was so drunk that he could barely open his eyes, he unlocked the mechanical lock easily. The woman kept her promise and asked the emperor to grant her marriage to the eighth prince. The emperor agreed happily and set their wedding date in 7 days. The crown prince was always worried that the woman would refuse to marry him. He deliberately waited at the woman's door, trying to persuade her to be his concubine. After being firmly rejected, the crown prince became self-delusional, thinking that the woman was just angry with him. He even argued that with her family as a backer, she would not be bullied even as a concubine. But he still received a cold response from the woman. The crown prince left a harsh threat, saying he would send a wedding procession to pick her up in 7 days. In the blink of an eye, it was the wedding day. The crown prince waited outside the woman's house with a small bridal sedan. When he saw the woman come out on her own initiative, he thought she was eager to marry him. He even went further and demanded that the woman first kneel down and apologize to him for what happened before. The woman said directly that the one she wanted to marry was the eighth prince. As soon as she finished speaking, the eighth prince arrived as promised. But the crown prince was still self-delusional, believing that the woman had deliberately invited the eighth prince to annoy him. He arrogantly ordered his men to take the woman away by force, but was stopped by the eighth prince on the spot. At this moment, the woman took out the imperial edict of marriage granted by the emperor, completely shattering the crown prince's illusion.